Hello viewers, and welcome to this lesson on the decline and fall of hell. We shall understand the writer Robert Lynd. Robert Lynd was an Irish writer, an urbane literary essayist, and a strong Irish nationalist as well. He was the son of a Presbyterian church moderator, was born in Belfast, and a Protestant too. He was educated at Royal Belfast Academical Institution and studied at Queen's University. He began his life as a journalist on the Northern Whig in Belfast. In 1901, he moved to London via Manchester and shared his accommodation with his friend, the artist Paul Henry. He wrote for the first Drama Criticism, today edited by Jerome K. Jerome, and then later for the Daily News, which came to be known as the News Chronicle, later for which he was the literary editor. He then settled in Hampstead in Keats Grove, which was near the house of John Keats. He married Sylvia Dryhurst, who was a poetess and novelist, and together they were popular as literary hosts in the group including J.B. Priestley. A wide literary circle made their home in Hampstead a meeting place. He used the pseudonym Y.Y. in writing for the New Statesman. His weekly essay Kingsley ran from 1913 to 1945, and C. H. Rolfe commented that it was irreplaceable. Among the famous books of Lynd, which are over 30, Home Life in Ireland, Ireland a Nation, The Art of Letters, and Dr. Johnson and Company are noteworthy. Lynd died in 1949 and was buried in Belfast City Cemetery. Wit, wisdom, and humor are part of Lynd's essays. He says that he included them in praise of mistakes, how they become useful and how the world enjoys them. He opined that it would be difficult to write something without slipping somewhere. Our enjoyment of a writer does not get intruded with the mistakes done, and the author's writing uninterestingly only matters more and is unpardonable. This Irish genius shared his world of laughter with us during 1879 to 1949. Lynd was born in an upper middle class Ulster Protestant family and was sent to university for education. Now that was a time when very few people could afford to give proper university education to their children. He had a struggling early life at London. Desmond McCarthy wrote, "For several years Lynd knew what it was to live undernourished and on the edge of poverty." His friend Paul Henry, the Belfast-born artist and a radical like Lynd himself, gave shelter in his studio to Lynd, which Lynd accepted gladly. Lynd achieved international reputation as an essayist, but at the same time he also wrote politics and placed the case for Irish nationalism that was published in the year 1919. Being a fluent Irish speaker, his activities included his membership in Gaelic League. He wrote for the Republic and spoke at the funeral of Irish Republican and Marxist James Connolly in the year 1916. He was also a loyal friend of Roger Casement. We shall now run through some famous quotes by Robert Lynd. The first, "Let a thoroughly bad man become religious without changing his nature. There is no knowing what he will do." A second quote, "Virtue may seem as sleepy as a cat, but she is dangerous when she sleeps." A third, "The chief objection to growing old is not that one grows old oneself, but that the world grows older, and it is not so much that the world grows older as that the world we knew once is now in ruins." 4. "Too many Nelsons would spoil a navy, and one blind eye is enough for a fleet." The fifth, "I sometimes suspect that half our difficulties are imaginary, and if we keep quiet about them, they would disappear." There has never been a satisfactory definition of what constitutes a gentleman. I have been called a gentleman myself. The 7th, there must be a mild pleasure in irritating other people by going about the world with a sweet and sticky, intolerable smile. 8th, loudly as many of us protest against noise, we know in our hearts that the real terrifying thing is silence. The 9th, there are only two sure means of forgetfulness known to a man: work and drink, and of the two, work is the more economical. The 10th, it is in games that many men discover their paradise. The 11th, the lowbrow often believes that a bad book is good, while the highbrow believes that a good book is bad. The 12th, it is only in literature that coincidences seem unnatural. Every man of genius is considerably helped by being dead. The 14th, there are some people who want to throw their arms around you simply because it is Christmas. There are other people who want to strangle you simply because it's Christmas. The 15th, the English are patient people. If they were not, there would have been so many bad hotels. The sense of one's ignorance is a much more useful thing than the sense of knowledge. The truth is, our clothes make us to a great extent what we are. Here we would discuss the decline of fall and hell, which is a part of the book This and That. This book consists of essays that have appeared from week to week in the New Statesman. The essays have related topics on suspicion, good resolutions, the sin of dancing, and the decline and fall of hell. On Christmas, on indignation, confessions, the sea, a defense of critics, and on the beauty of statistics, and so on. In the essay on suspicion, Lynd says that suspicion is a beast with numerous eyes, most of them being blind or colorblind. Suspicion is a beast with numerous eyes, like the ears of a deaf man, and Lynd humorously comments that the person hears solicitors when you say whiskers. It is a beast with 1,000 tongues which are slanderous. It is a very close caricature of the passion for truth. Lynd says that Columbus looking for America and Galileo turning his telescope on the heavens was for the good, as they were nobly suspicious. At the same time, a suspicious politician is the prophet only of party disreputableness. Thus, there are many kinds of sins, of which suspicion is the most tedious one. In the essay named Good Resolutions, the writer says that very little respect is paid to this aspect, though it turns out to be a popular feature of the new year. A man who always turns a new leaf is laughed at, and proverbs are created to discourage him, such as, "The road to hell is laid with good intentions." Our goodness always resides next to our resolutions. If we are asked to put it into our actions, it is something like asking a man who has been devoted his genius to literature suddenly switches to marine biology. We are not provided to accommodate for the rapid changes of nature, unfortunately. Each one is assigned a role to play, like the roles of being a poet, an economist, a politician, and one at making good plans and the other good at putting them into action. Good resolutions are very delightful, and they appear to be like morality at its dawn. This morality is fresh and full of song. The only problem is that we are addicted to old habits, which can be altered with ease and with standard good resolutions. In the essay of the sins of dancing, the writer says that it is a pleasure to see modern clergymen trying to run a race of tolerance with the existing dramatic critics and the lunatics. But on the whole, Lynd prefers clergymen in the denouncing mood. They remind us that soul does not pour out its riches in ragtime songs, and that gates of heaven will not open to the bark of a toy dog. Man originally expressed his deepest emotions about his food, love, and war in dances. In course of time, he felt the need of a leader of the dance to evolve himself as the hero of the group soul, and later swelled into a god. Each of us has a belief of our choice. Each of us contains something of a preacher and something of a dancer, depending on the interest that we have on either or both. Finally, till the end of time, the completeness of our humanity is proved and conclusion is found which satisfies every one of us. There is a significant change that has come over religious imagination. This is discussed in The Decline and Fall of Hell. A manifesto of disbelief in hell has been issued, and there seems to be no heresy hunt. Disbelief in hell looks not as a symbol of something that appears sufficiently real, but as a structured and definite place on the map of the universe. And if we talk of its existence, it is fair. It is a gulf of wild flame and hot red torments with no end. A time was in existence when to doubt in the scenery and the ability to use a strong and effective language about hell would have been thought of as a kind of atheism. Without hell, a world would have appeared to the most of the religious minds almost as isolated as a world without God. What life is understood to be was chiefly in terms of hell. It was a vision of tightrope walk across a bottomless pit of shooting fires. At the same time, it would be the intolerable wailing of those condemned to suffer eternal punishment. Instead of escaping from the malignance of the demons in the vast hell, heaven was sought less for its delightful world. Men have been studying the geography and its existence with greater enthusiasm of research when compared to the study of the geography of Africa. It is indeed true that hell was the most desperately real of countries. The rule of hell was described by these countries that estimated the population, giving in detail the names of 72 of its princes, with 7,405,926 devils serving them. In the book named The Apocalypse of St. Peter, that is as old as the 2nd century, the occupations of those condemned to suffer eternal punishment are set forth with a horrid carefulness. Hell is described as a continent of lakes of fire and burning mud over which the people involved in adultery hang by the hair, and those who speak evil of God and of the way of righteousness by the tongue. Those who approach false witnesses chew tongues of fire in their mouths. Misers roll on hot red stones that are sharper than spikes. Men who have attempted unnatural crimes are hurled from the top of dreadful, rough and broken rocks. The writers of the early Christian centuries, including the Middle Ages, sought out the most extraordinary torments of imagination that were sensationally envisioned and added them to the picture of daily life of hell and purgatory. The monk of Evesham saw in his dream of purgatory that men were fried in a pan and others were pierced with fiery nails even to their bones, and it extended to the loosening of their joints. In some cases, worms gnawed the sinners, and few others were dragged with hooks or hung on gallows or soaked in baths of pitch and brimstone with horrible odor. If they escaped, or they even tried to escape, the devils that met with would beat them sorely, whipping them hard and torturing them with forks and other kinds of torments. Lynd says that we need not go back beyond our own days to know of these imaginations. related to tortures of various kinds. Many living now have had the right. Fears of their childhood made disastrous and monstrous with stories of devils and demons with hot red pincers to strip off one's flesh, and with hot red nails to mangle and tear one's back roughly. Lynd here tells of a friend who loved to tell the regular Sunday sermons of an ancient clergyman to his wide gathering to run away from the doom of the condemned sinner. The sinner was portrayed as the one seated on a projected crag or a sharp stone over a horrible, hissing, moaning, and raging sea of an eternity that is undone, calling and crying out, "The harvest is past and I am not saved." Lynd could not understand this point and therefore questioned as to why the imaginations of human beings were not revolted against such a painful, wild gathering of sensationalism earlier itself. Lecky tells of the Irishman Johannes Scotus Erigena, who was described to be the only theologian of Middle Ages to dispute the material fire of hell. It had been accepted by others either in terror or with delight. Men cannot be questioned for obtaining sensual pleasure from imposing the pains of hell on their enemies, as if whipping their children and slaves. Lynd wrote, "What shall be the magnitude of that scene? How shall I wonder? How shall I laugh? How shall I rejoice? How shall I triumph when I behold so many and such illustrious kings, who were said to be mounted into heaven, groaning with Jupiter their God in the lowest darkness of hell? Then shall the soldiers who persecuted the name of Christ burn in more cruel fire than any they had kindled for their saints." Compared with such spectacles, with such subjects of triumph as these, what can praetor or consul, quaestor or pontiff afford? And even now, faith can bring them near, imagination can depict them as present. Thus, the poor man's consolation was that hell and was the oppressed and persecuted man's revenge. Sleep did not bring greater balm, and the thought of the large engulfing doom for neighbors was outrageously disgraceful. On the other hand, it is not fair to suggest that the ordinary Christian ever believed in hell and that he would be saved in honest misery of heart. "O Lord, shake these thy children over hell fire, but shake them in mercy," is the old evangelist saying. A voice is heard of the one who regarded hell not with happiness, as if it were the end of his enemies, but with seriousness and thoughtfulness, as if it were a mandatory moral agency desperately. The man must have believed that all men need to be terrorized into goodness, or never know what goodness is at all. It is very interesting to note that a clerical correspondent has been writing to the Daily News, revealing his ideas which were gloomy and similar. As a result of long and rich experience, Lynd declares that he never knew any case of a man who was converted but through fear. If men did not believe in hell, it is quite common, or used to be common, that the young men profess in the church. They would surprise the earth with their lusts and exploits. It is viewed in this light that the devil becomes the world's super policeman, and those who seek to throw him out will naturally be looked upon as dangerous persons promoting disorders against law or custom. In the lives of both sinners and saints, we cannot deny the great part played by fear, and if we do so, it is great foolishness. Finally, what matters is whether morality is ultimately served for our being scared of the wrongdoings that need to be considered and called for. Definitely, devils have been cropping by the hell as well as of saints upon earth. Men who believed in hell invented the thumb screw and the rack and most of the devilish and sharp instruments of torture the world has ever known. Be it whether hell was made by man or not, but the racks and torture were believed. It could also have been that man took to torture because he believed in the existence of torture and hell. It cannot be denied that the worst period of torture was when, in our European civilization, people believed that God himself doomed to ferocious and cruel and eternal torments on men, women, and even infants in cradle, on the most ridiculously small excuses. The conscience has also restricted him to believe that divinity or god or goddesses could do such a thing. It can be taken that a beneficent god could permit cancer and make the Putumayo to flow and the factory system to work at its worst, might easily grant the fires of medieval hell to man. But Stevenson says that even cancer and the Putumayo are not eternal but temporary. The old hell was no longer accepted by thoughtful Christians, as it meant a victory of righteousness which may not have been the final one, but the final defeat of God. Those who cling to the doctrine of their church on the point would obviously agree with the French cure who would reveal that he believed in hell, but he had not thought that there would be anyone else but Voltaire. Even Voltaire is believed no more a scandalous person by people today to deserve infinite millions of years of distress and suffering. The truth is that hell would shock our moral sense. Tennyson had put the modern disbelief with a forcibleness that is theatrical. He said that if he woke up after his death, it should be in heaven. If he found that there was a hell around him, he would turn around and shake his fist in the face of God Almighty. From this point in time, the foundations of hell have subsided. The old flames died down. The background days made available for the man with no fierceness and no engulfed universe, but a cricket scoreboard and a page of competitions in a small paper. The antithesis may have been an unfair one, but there seems to be a cosmic sense certainly getting lost to the general imagination. Materialistic terrors would be replaced by moral ideas. This is because a moral hell is ready to rise out of the destruction of the fiery hell. One needs to know and say that the moral hell is a place for the souls of the dying people to be cleansed and made pure. It is not an easy task to escape from hell, and not so much holiday as we thought. There is always a break of adventure between paradise and people, and all the destructions and fears are to be overcome as of old. An allegory has been chosen by us from our doors, but the reality which appears ghostly returns and stands outside the window. And salvation and damnation are finally the two important facts under the sun. At the end, the saints, the parsons, and everyone indeed, but gloating old Tertullian, an old Christian who wrote aggressively and sarcastically against the way people forgive the serious public sins, were axiomatically correct. With this, we come to the end of the session on the decline and fall of hell. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you.